We all see you pointing to your fancy new toy, Ray. We all see that. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see you. We've got some old friends here. Hopefully some new people popping in. We got a bunch of people watching on YouTube. You are in the Zoom test kitchen, and we are going to be cooking up some good stuff today. We are so excited and honored to have Andy and Sam here from Zoom Events, Zoom Productions, and Zoom in general. Here's the problem, though. The problem is there's just too damn much to talk about. I mean, we had this grand plan of sort of reviewing the updates that, were launched, what was it, 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And in the meantime, we have Zoom Notes and we've got Zoom Companion and all this other stuff that it's just amazing the pace at which everything is growing and moving and shaking. So first, let's just say hello and welcome to all of you guys. Thank you so much for being here, Andy and Sam.
Oh, thanks for having us. It's always good to sit down in the kitchen. And thank you, David, for taking the torch and moving it forward and allowing this great community to continue and all the service that it provides to everybody who watches and attends. So thanks for doing that. And we're happy to be here. Absolutely.
And Sam, that is not where you actually are.
This is where I actually am. This is me. No virtual background today.
Hold on. That's not a virtual background?
No.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. This is the shindig for today. But
very nice.
It just off camera, there's wires everywhere. So
like all of us, like for all of us. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I know Jonathan wanted to come, but he got pulled into a meeting. We're really grateful for both of you. Why don't we start with, we want to leave lots of time for questions and all that, but why don't we start with those updates, with in particular the three liminal apps. Maybe you can start us out with that, Andy, and then we can jump over to some of the more vanilla Zoom stuff that has transpired over the past week or two.
Absolutely. So it's been a busy summer for us. As you know, at the beginning of the summer, we announced betas for several different pieces of our liminal app portfolio, including ZoomISO, which we showed the 2.1 beta. We also announced Zoom Cuts this past summer, which was the bringing of Apple Shortcuts across our platform. It's natively available in the iOS and iPadOS Zoom clients, and it's available as a standalone client through Liminal, a Zoom Cuts client, dedicated macOS application that we included there as well. And we also spoke about new things that we would be bringing to ZoomOSC as part of all that once we completed the beta period that we were under. So at the beginning of August, we introduced updates to all of our apps on all platforms. So ZoomISO graduated into release from the 2.1 beta. And the main things, again, about 2.1 were the SRT streaming capability. So it's that ability to take a MPEG-2 TS wrap around a H.264 and AAC audio stream and send that out over SRT, which is kind of, if you will, a protocol of a cloud. It's a great way to send video over WAN. With the balancing of the latency, kind of user-definable things that you can do there. So we've seen a lot of interesting use of SRT already, and we were excited to bring that to release. We introduced this idea of a capture mode. So traditionally, when enabling ZoomISO, you would have to say this meeting is being recorded, and it would be the local recording permission that'd be required, and the meeting would have to have local recording enabled, so on and so forth. So there's a lot that was involved in that. And what we've now done is we've opened that up to be more customizable to the end user. So if you'd rather use the live streaming notification, which in many situations is easier to enable, particularly in enterprise context, that's now the default, but you have the choice. And as part of introducing capture modes, we introduced the ability to petition the host for that permission. So let's say you join and you're not the host, and when you enable the output engine, it now sends a message to the host that says, hey, this person is using ZoomISO and they would like to have the permission to be able to capture these raw streams. Here's the information. Are you okay with this? And that's true for both recording capture mode and live streaming capture mode. So we think we've now made it a lot easier to use ZoomISO in most situations and most meeting configurations. It's disentangled from like the cloud recording limitations and stuff like that. So that's now all sort of smoothed out, and we appreciate all the feedback that we got on that. We also introduced a handful of new audio tools into ZoomISO. This idea of sub mixes has been introduced into the app. So if you want a mix of everybody who's on an output, or you want a mix of everybody who's not on an output, you can now get that and assign that to channels in advanced audio. That's super helpful for monitoring purposes, or if you just need a simpler way of combining those things together. Maybe an app doesn't support all the isolated audio stems, but you just want to get a mix of the ones that you care about. Easier now to manage that as a source.
Can you say eCam? does not support capturing all those multiple inputs? Yeah,
definitely could be helpful in that situation as well. So
by the way, I just want to go back. The notification for ISO wanting to turn on capture is fantastic. That workflow is just so wonderful. The one thing that I think I said it on last week's show is I need a ding. I need a bell or a ding or some sort of audible notification as the host, because I'm not always paying attention to the pop-ups that come on my screen. But love that stuff. Just great.
Can I ask you, David, is my mic okay, or is there something going on with it?
People, I've heard someone say it's a little hot, but maybe a little distortion coming through. But
yeah, let me see if I can. Give me just 1 second. Let me restart it.
I'm actually gonna send us over. Sam, while he's doing that, let me ask you. You guys have been rolling out over the course of this summer. Forgive me if I don't remember the name exactly. Zoom Production Studio, or is it just Zoom Studio?
Production Studio, which is a feature inside of Zoom Events. Yep.
Right. So how has that been going? What are you seeing in Production Studio that's working and that you want to work on?
Yeah, so Production Studio just recently hit its actual full GA. So it's been kind of very close to that finish line for a little bit here. And that's why you've seen, I've actually done 2 different tech talks about it over the past couple of months, giving demos of how to do it and how you manipulate around the scenes and everything. But then now it is actually across that finish line in GA and out for the public. So we've been seeing lots of people, lots of interest in getting their hands on that and starting to play with it and see how it does what it does.
That's fantastic. Are you finding that people are, I'm not sure if there's even a way for you to know this, but I'm curious if the people who are playing with it are new to this kind of work, or if it's folks that have been doing production with other tools that are trying out Production Studio. Is there a way for you to gauge that at all?
I guess not a great one, but my anecdote to that would be my time at Infocom over the summer, where Andy and I were both out there talking about Production Studio a lot. And obviously that's a little tech heavier of an audience, but we also get a lot of what I would consider like the core DIY users from the education spaces and things like that. where they're coming in and they're like, hey, I'm the operator for the webinars at my college, or with my IT team, with my health company, whatnot. And so they're not necessarily production people, but they are in charge of producing these things. And I think we saw across the gamut of those, basically anyone who is tasked with running this thing, be they more in the software native space, or whether they'd be doing that with ADAMs and things like that and OBS today, both took a look at it and went, man, this could make my life so much easier. This could, on some of these low lift things, just give me that ability to move scene to scene to scene as I carry my show from start to finish.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that these are not mutually exclusive capabilities that we have on our platform, right? It's not like we decided, we're only going to make tools for the people who need it to be easy to use, or we're only going to make tools for the broadcasters, right? We've decided to do things in every category, and there's a step ladder, right? So it's, for that person who wants maybe 80% of the end result of using some sort of compositing tool like vMix plus ZoomISO, but they only have the capabilities that lets them expend 20% of the effort to do so. We're now getting them to that benchmark, right? But it's not a replacement for your full production pipeline, right? Your sort of your more managed service approach to doing this kind of stuff. It's designed to be complementary. And again, we've said it before, but the other thing that's really neat about Production Studio is its ability to produce a session within itself. So it allows you to have your panelists and your audiences co-located, which is great because it means that they can take advantage of the chat and the Q&A and all the native tools that are available in Zoom. Otherwise, if they're in a separate meeting, right, you have to kind of move that back and forth between the two, and that can become cumbersome, although powerful. And there's still many use cases where that's the right way to go. This is now more of an integrated experience. And I would say that just because you have a full production pipeline, don't necessarily write off Production Studio, because you may find situations where you want to use that kind of capability. And I think Sam had a great example of that at our Perspectives Analyst event earlier this month, or last month, where we showed the combination of a ZoomISO workflow and a Production Studio workflow for serving multiple audiences together. So I think that, again, it's for the pros, it's another tool in the tool belt. For those who have traditionally not had access to this type of production capability in Zoom, this is a new way for them to get involved and add more value to their events.
And as you as you said, even for the pros, that's the killer feature right there. Being able to have everybody in the same meeting, access the same chat, the same Q&A, the same all of that stuff. That really is the killer feature.
It really is, and that's there are two magic pieces for the pro market. One is something I said on the office hours the other day when we were there, which was, and this is not one of the two. Additionally to that, one of the things I had pointed out was that what Production Studio doesn't change is the mindset needed to run an event like this. It doesn't change the need for someone who's sitting there from a production standpoint, or from a producer standpoint, and saying, I want to go from this to this to this and control that look as we transition across. Production Studio changes how you accomplish it, but it doesn't change what you're doing and the mindset it takes to get into those sorts of things. The two magic parts around Production Studio, A, is the one that Andy just talked about, where you are within the session, and there really is not another way to do that, no matter how much team and resources you have. You can bridge some of the things back. You can do some really advanced workflows with ZoomOSC, and we've done a lot of those. But at the end of the day, there is something really magical about being able to have my presenters just join the Zoom call with everybody else and then be part of my produced feed while still reacting to chat, polls, Q&A, perfect visibility, perfect sync, because they're there. I'm not having to sync things. The other thing is much less talked about, and I don't think really many people have kind of become aware of this, but Production Studio brought with it an improved management of HD in a way that we hadn't seen before. And what I mean by that is, with Production Studio, the produced view can actually coexist in 1080 and 720 at the same time if your account is configured for 1080 already. So if any of you guys have kind of followed along
and ladies,
with, if any of you guys have followed along with how 1080 and 720 work in Zoom, you know that it can only send one HD resolution. And so if you do have things that are needing to step back, it's actually better to let it step back to 720 versus 360. And I've talked about this on the test kitchen before. Well, Production Studio actually gets rid of that for the produced feed. It actually lets everything coexist together. So I can have web client people watching at 720 in-app people watching at 1080, someone on their phone watching at 360, all at the same time, all getting the best experience at an attendee by attendee basis.
That's amazing. One of the questions that's coming up over on YouTube is Production Studio only for events, or is it also available for sessions?
It is available for sessions. So sessions are definitely going to go under the events umbrella. You can kind of divide it out as to things I build in events.zoom.us versus things that I build at zoom.us or just scheduled through my regular meeting client. Sessions and events both can take advantage of Production Studio. As of today, standalone webinars cannot use Production Studio, even if you hold a Zoom Events license. It has to be within an event or a session.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh.
Okay, we didn't know that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is a piece of news, Sam, that I got permission yesterday to talk about because it's in our public. If you go back to the announcement blog for Production Studio, there's a sentence at the bottom that you may not have read if you didn't get all the way down. And it says that it is our public intention at this point to introduce Production Studio to webinars hosted outside of Zoom events and sessions if the account owns the sessions or events license. So like Backstage, where you can have Backstage in a webinar that takes place outside of the Zoom event platform, so long as you have the license that corresponds to it. Production Studio today can't do that, but it is a stated intention now on our website that is where we plan to go with this.
That'll be nice not to have to pansy around that question quite as much anymore.
Yes, that's fantastic. We got questions loading up here. I don't want us to lose where we were going, Andy, but if it's okay with you, hang tight on the updates. We'll come right back to this. Is that okay if we get a couple of these questions in?
But is the mic better now? Everything's in good shape?
I think you sound fantastic. Mike, okay. Do you want to, not Mike as in MIC, but Mike Latta, do you want to ask one of these questions for us?
Sure. So Alan is asking, in the latest version of ZoomOSC, in the participant management tab, I see a new column called incoming. I see unsubscribed for all the participants. What does this indicate?
Yeah, so this is a feature actually that is supposed to be in ZoomISO, and it is in ZoomISO, but it's supposed to be hidden in the ZoomOSC version. They're actually one app, and they're just two different versions of the same code base. Some people don't necessarily realize that, but ZoomOSC lives inside of ZoomISO, and sometimes a column from ZoomISO appears in ZoomOSC. What we were trying to do here was introduce the participant management workflow that we have as a tab inside of ZoomISO into ZoomOSC. So in ZoomOSC, you have now the ability to manage pins and spotlights from the same table that in ZoomISO you manage who's on what output. And then it has the search, it has the filtering, it can see who's a co-host, who's got a certain name or whatever. That's all supposed to be over there. If there's that additional column, that was a new column that we added under the ISO side of the house that slipped into the OSC release, and we're going to hide that in a future release. But there's nothing to what it's supposed to show you in ZoomISO is the resolution of the incoming participant assigned to an output. So you already had that today in the status column of the outputs tab in ZoomISO, and we were trying to introduce that for people who want to live on the participant management tab, where they set up their outputs at the beginning of the meeting, and then they want to go over and switch tabs to participant management, where they're actually going to manage who's on what output, and they want to be able to see the statistics of that participant in that view instead of having to tab back and forth to monitor the feeds on one and then operate the feeds on the other. So it's a mistake on our side to have that column there. We'll try to hide that in the next release, but it's because we're trying over time. We've been aligning more and more the feature sets of OSC and ISO as far as these sort of user interface elements are concerned, but it doesn't make sense in the OSC context.
So this is what I've got OSC running right here, and I know it's small. I'm sorry. For whatever reason, I can't magnify in here, but you can see this is the incoming column he was talking about, not subscribe. But this is really where it in OSC where you can very easily spotlight, pin. If you're not using Companion, if you're not using a Stream Deck, it's quite easy to do it from here as well. So that's what he was talking about. Let's see. I saw a hand up before, but it looks like Andre. Did you want to jump in? Yeah, Andre, go for it.
Yeah, I didn't want to disturb being the first on, so I lowered my hand. Yeah, I got a question regarding ZoomISO, NDI, and vMix, and the backbone. So my aim would be to have like 6 participants out of ZoomISO into vMix, and I wonder if I need like a 10 gig network, or if I would get it with a 1 gig network. And I also wonder if it's like maybe a good idea to have 1 or 2 feeds in 1080p and the rest in 720, which I assign when I have a multi-up, because I don't need each individual as 1080p when I have a multi-up. So what would be your approach and your regarding network switches? Should I buy a Netgear 4250 or so? Yeah, what would be your approach?
Yeah, so
thank you.
The way my team does it today, we tend to standardize in general for our rigs when we're using vMix. We tend to standardize to 6 individual speakers, and we tend to do them at 720, just because of the minimal difference between 720 and 1080. Combined with, honestly, it comes down to CPU performance. We're using the M1 Mac Mini, the base M1 Mac Mini at the moment. So we tend to do 6 at 720 plus a active screen share and an active speaker. The active speaker ends up being a really good catch-all if we have somebody else just pop in number 7, number 8, whatever, lets us catch them quickly and just put that into 1-up. But that's working really well for us. We're doing that with a backup rig on a 1 gig switch, no problem. And I wouldn't think you would have, even stepping up to 1080, as long as your CPU performance is good on your Mac system you're running ISO on. I don't think you would have any issues network bandwidth wise coming out of ISO with 8 1080s. That should be pretty low in the grand scheme of things. I think I would be more concerned about what else is coming into vMix. It's not about the pipe coming out of ISO, it's about the pipe coming into vMix. And so I guess this is just going to be a plug for earlier this week. Office Hours did a really in-depth second hour with some incredible experts on NDI talking about the switches and stuff in depth. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's good rating. We have a base Mac Mini, and yes, with standard network infrastructure. Would you really recommend buying a Netgear switch, and if especially as we don't have that much network knowledge, or would you say a good configured Ubiquiti switch is proper as well?
I've had really good luck without needing much in the way of managed switches with relatively simple systems like this, where I just have ZoomISO feeding vMix right next to it on the LAN. I'm not needing subnetting. I don't have a lot of other network traffic involved. I'm kind of isolated, but you can't go wrong with a 4250. The management is fantastic when you need it. So if I was buying one today, I'd be buying one.
Yeah, I think if you're going to invest right for the long term, it's like, especially if you start now in the future, when I get into like Dante and NDI and managing all of that, like as your needs scale up, you may find that you outgrow the switches that you're buying now if you're only buying for what you need to do today. Right.
Yeah, copy. Thank you guys. That helps a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
So we still have some other questions, but let's get back to the updates. So when we last left our story, we had launched ISO, OSC, and cuts. They all kind of came out of beta, it sounds like, or not cuts.
So yeah, so ZoomISO came out of beta. What we did is we brought the join flow that we introduced into the ZoomISO beta, and we brought it over to ZoomOSC. So when ZoomOSC 4.3 came out for both Mac and PC, we introduced the ability to get your display name automatically from your web portal. We introduced the ability to start your instant meetings versus your personal meetings, so your PMI versus instant meeting. We introduced the ability to join Zoom events with a browser where you click a button. It shows you all the events that you're hosting, all the events that you're attending. You can see the sessions in that event, then click a button to join them. We introduced the ability to join via pasting a link to Zoom. So you sign in, you get a button that says, hey, you want to join the link? Open that up, copy, paste that over. So ZoomOSC got that whole new join flow experience that we had introduced early in the summer into ZoomISO. So now both products have that join flow, which I think lowers the friction to it really takes advantage of the fact that you're signed in and uses more of the different capabilities that are part of your account. And so it should be very helpful. And the Zoom Events join flow is super helpful if you're working with Zoom Events. Traditionally, that had been very, very hard to do. We introduced APIs into the Zoom API to do that. We introduced functionality into the SDK to do that. So it was a full team effort, and we now have a much easier path to joining Zoom Events from SDK apps than we had previously. So thanks to everybody who came together on that. That was a lot of fun. And then on Zoom Cuts. So in Zoom Cuts territory, we constantly are working with the community to try to understand where are the pain points in using the user interface and how can we try to solve that with Apple shortcuts. Well, I think we've all been in the situation before where somebody says, I'm going to share my screen, and then we all wait and we sit there for a few minutes seconds, quite a while they navigate around and say, okay, I'm going to open this button and I'm going to look and pick this screen. I'm going to do that. And we all kind of sit there, kills the pace, if you will, of the conversation. So we said, hey, wait a minute. What if we used Apple shortcuts to be able to quickly launch shares of different elements? So we've now fully exposed the sharing controls into the shortcuts interface. You can share a screen, you can share application windows, you can share a region of a screen, you can share a video file, you can do all these different things. You can configure whether you want to share sound or not, or have the optimized for video on or off. So really robust implementation. We look forward to seeing people play around with that. We also introduced controls for the waiting room. I think that was one of your requests, David. So that's now running in there. We've done some other things in the back end to try to clean up a couple of corners. But as we continue to look at what should Apple shortcuts look like when it's eventually part of our core client, like it is on iOS and iPadOS, this interaction with the community, I think, is a kind of an unprecedented means of collaboration for a company at Zoom scale to do directly with its users. So we encourage you to take advantage of that, build your shortcuts, ask questions, and let us know how we can improve it. So,
I gotta tell you, my biggest problem. This is talk about first world problems. Is do I use the vanilla Zoom client or the Cuts client? Because each one has like if you use the Cuts client, it's not the latest greatest release from Zoom. But if you use the vanilla client, you don't. It's I never know which Zoom client to use. It's so frustrating. So I'm really looking forward to when those are built into the regular client. But
absolutely, it's the intention that we eventually consolidate everything together and make that easier for you. This is more of an early look for those who want to try this experience months ahead of when they would otherwise be able to, and help craft what they want that experience to look like. I think we've received so much amazing community feedback already. That it's making a measurable improvement to how we're going to approach this in the future. So
I was sent over in Discord. Someone mentioned in another chat another video conference player. I think it's called Sessions. I don't even know. I believe it's called Sessions, and they had an interesting implementation of the screen sharing piece, which I thought could be of interest to Zoom. Is they have these agendas that you set up ahead of time, and you before the meeting starts, you put the doc in, or you put the website, or you put whatever, and then when you kind of go through your agenda, it automatically brings those things up. I assume as screen shares. I haven't actually used it yet, but it looked interesting.
We have something similar to that called Webinar Resources. If you haven't played with it before, where you can upload all your assets, and then as you move through your agenda, there's a column that actually displays all of those different, whether it's a notice or a document or something like that. You can display those right there inside of the column.
Well, there it is. They stole it from you. Okay. I thought they were onto something, but yeah. All right, fantastic. Hey, Mike, do we have another question we want to throw up at this point?
Nothing from YouTube at this particular point, but continue on.
Yeah, well, so Ray is asking, it looks like, Sam, you answered this, right? The 1080, are the production studio feeds 1080, 720, 360 all fed from the host computer, or is that done at the Zoom server? Sam, do you want to expand on that a little, or is there anything to add?
So they are all happening down at the host. That's the way Zoom is architected to start with. There's not a lot of heavy lifting at the MMR in the cloud level. Everything is kind of being handled by your endpoint. If you have a virtual background rendering, if you have production studio rendering, if you have whatnot, those multiple resolutions, just like I'm sending right now. Right now, I'm sending, I'd have to open statistics to see if I'm at 720 or 1080 at the moment, depending on what else is going on. But then I'm sending a 360, I'm sending a 180, and I'm sending the three I'm sending, HD and 2 lower, concurrently. And so right now, on average, we tend to say that bandwidth-wise, you're looking at about 2 megs for a 720 feed and about 4 megs for a 1080 feed over Zoom, which with Production Studio, it's sending all of those. It's also sending the host direct camera to the others. So there's actually even more feeds to think about. But all in all, I think it's still about, my napkin math is going to say about 10 megs is my expected actual bandwidth usage to hit my network. So when we're comparing this to traditional streaming and hardware encoders, it's a drop in the bucket.
Fantastic. Robert, who's a regular here in the kitchen, is just mentioned that his life has changed since he started using Zoom Cuts. I can now have one person with a predefined list of help instructions in different languages, all on one Stream Deck.
Very clever. That's very clever.
Amazing. So what have we missed from anything else in the updates for the liminal apps that we should be aware of?
not from Liminal. A couple things in Zoom events though that we haven't gotten to yet. I want to highlight the hybrid event companion join for Zoom events. So this is something that Sam and I sort of with our teams pioneered at last year's Zoomtopia. We tried to create this experience where if you were in the room, you were in the same chat and Q&A pool seemingly as those who were remote. And that meant that from a moderator perspective, right, we talk about trying to level the playing field, right? Whether somebody's interacting remotely or whether somebody's interacting in the room, right? And by funneling everybody through the same interactive layer, it was just as probable that, we'd call on somebody in the space and read their question that way. We're showing up in the same scroll, the same feed as those who were commenting through Zoom remotely.
And
now,
in the room, they were accessing the chat like through a QR code or something?
So what they would do is they would, at Zoomtopia last year, was they scanned a QR code and they joined a webinar that had no audio and no video. And ZoomOSC was inside of it, pulling out their chat messages and sending chat messages on behalf of another meeting webinar taking place where the actual video and audio was. The reason we did that is we didn't want audio and video playing out of their phones and devices in the room, causing feedback, right? And we didn't want to hammer the access points in the space with all that bandwidth that we require to serve them, right? And that's the classic problem. So what we've now done is we've sort of productized that approach. After it was very successful at Zoomtopia, people walked away from that being like, wow, that's a great experience. How can we do that? It's now directly a function inside of the client. So rather than having two different meetings and webinars to manage all of this, when a person registers for a Zoom event basically when they're an in-person member of a hybrid event, their device allows them to join as an in-person attendee, in which case their device will not show audio and video. We call it companion mode, where they're now just interacting with chat and Q&A, and they're not receiving the audio feeds, receiving the participant video feeds, things like that. Sam, any additional thoughts on that?
I was going to point out that like they are joined to the meeting for everything except for live media streams, live audio and video. And there's a new little button there that pops up that says stream on. So if I am an attendee that was registered as an in-person attendee, but you know what, I left early, I'm in the cab on the way to the airport, or I didn't want to wake up this morning, I'm still in the hotel, but I still want to see the session, I can just hit stream on. And then that will connect me to those audio videos. So I still have that ability to join the session fully. But until then, by default in the room, when I do, it gives me a warning. Hey, you really want to do this? Like, you're going to cause problems for your neighbors here. They're going to be hearing you out the speaker. But there's also other things like, even without the stream on, you get the shared content on it and you get captions on it. So there's an accessibility angle as well, because now I don't need to have captions, mirrored in the back of the room like they do at the Disney shows, but I can just pull up my phone, join that meeting. With QR codes, there's kind of single direct joins in that you can throw up on the screen. And now everybody joins in with that QR straight to the session all the way down in the app. It's a deep link. And then right off the bat, automatically, my captions are there. The screen share is there. On my phone, I can pinch Zoom. I can take screenshots. It's really, really powerful.
So forgive me, is your implementation of this, is it what you did last year at Zoomtopia? Is it the same implementation?
No, not at all.
No. What we had to do was, without product backing, figure out how to, from an AV production standpoint, architect it and fake it and make it happen. Now it's much, much better because you are just joining the direct session. So there's no idiosyncrasies with that bridge or anything like that. You're in the session, the reporting works, all the other stuff works. I don't have to set up extra sessions. I don't have to have different links. It just automatically is tied to your ticket. If you have an in-person ticket, when you join, you are in companion mode by default.
Gotcha. Copy that. I want to throw a question out, but I don't want you to answer it right now, but maybe think about it. We'll get to it later. Because as I'm listening to you, I have not jumped into Zoom events yet. And in part, it's because it has scared me, because it's very big and it takes time. But also because the events that I do are not huge events. They're I'm with a temple, whatever, and a school. I'm wondering, one of the things I'm ruminating about is the place of Zoom events for smaller organizations, for smaller events. I'm thinking about every hybrid event, because every event really is hybrid at this point. Every event should be using Zoom events to be able to take advantage of all this functionality. But because some of these events have 10, 15, 20, 50 people at them and another 20, 30 online, it feels like it's too much. Maybe that's where sessions comes in. But it's just a question I have in my mind. But let me get Andre to come up because I'm sure his is much more technical.
Yeah, but regarding mobile devices and audio, my experience is that if I join a meeting with a mobile device, I can't turn down the volume completely. I only can turn down the volume completely if I leave audio. Why is this, or is it possible to change this? Because I'm often in situations where I have a mobile device to like see aside what's happening there, and I want to turn it down, but I want to be able to quickly turn it up when I want to listen in, and that's not possible.
I've noticed that also. Is that an Apple thing?
It's ultimately everything about Zoom's mic and speaker settings are controlling the OS level speaker settings across desktop, client, across mobile. All we're doing is exposing those controls. So in that case, yeah, it's Apple doesn't let you turn all the way down if you have a speaker.
Yeah, but I have an Android mobile, and that's not working as well.
I guess Android does it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately,
Okay.
we're just exposing their control. So it's also why, like on a desktop client, if I plug in a Scarlett or something, all my volume sliders get grayed out, because on Mac, the Scarlett doesn't have an OS level volume control for Zoom to grab.
Copy. Thank you.
Fantastic. Should we, anything else from events, Sam, that you want to bring us up to date on, or should we jump over to some of the latest and greatest from Zoom itself?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the generic category there.
All right. So can we talk about Companion, not the Companion that we all play with OSC, but Zoom Companion, which seemingly out of nowhere moved from Zoom, was it Zoom IQ, I think, and was renamed Zoom Companion. Now it's free for all paid customers, which made me very happy because I had turned it on. What is going on there? It's fantastic. It's so interesting.
Yeah, so in this one, I'll be a little more high level since the announcement's very recent, and I also want to defer to the expert voices on this. But I think your summary is accurate. What you had previously known as Zoom IQ is now AI Companion, and we have, I think, taken a very open approach to how we roll that out across the license tiers that are available there. I know you had been concerned previously when, for example, Summary was in beta that, you were worried, what is the implication of that? And I think I was kind of chuckling to myself as I was watching the other day. Everyone had a kind of the consensus, oh yeah, of course it's going to charge more, right? All that stuff. And in fact, now it's, it's part of those license tiers. So I think we've taken an unexpected choice there, but I think it's also, very industry leading in that way. Look, I think Zoom wants to be that complete end-to-end collaboration platform, right? We've talked about how we're more than just a meeting app, right? It might have been how you met us, but now how we stay with you is the way that we sort of assist you throughout your entire working day and life cycle and collaboration, all things that go in along with that. And I think that AI Companion is really designed to speak to that purpose. And yeah, I don't have a ton more I can share right now about it. I think that, like I said, it's a combination of things that you've seen before, right? From Zoom IQ, and some new things that were announced as part of that blog post. But I'll put in a link to the blog where you can read about the new features. And then as you experiment with them and try them out and you have specific questions about how to use them, please come back and we can dig into those specific details in the future.
And that growing of Zoom from just the meeting app to not the everything app, but the communication, the connection app, we see that with the growth of Notes even, and the integration of mail and calendar and all those other things. We really can live in our Zoom clients at this point. What do you know? Do you know anything about Notes?
Yeah,
I haven't even played with it.
So again, another example in that legacy of trying to assist you in more ways that you need to collaborate. The idea, I remember the first time I ever experienced a collaborative document when I was in school, and it's like what like a mind-blowing experience that was, right? And now the ability to sort of tack that on along the same lines as having that simultaneous video conversation. Just the other day, I was working with a colleague on a presentation or a document that we had to submit. And rather than trying to do like screen share and then, go back and forth, and we also have it open in a browser so that we can write on it, but we want to be able to, be in Zoom and have access and see what other people are highlighting and stuff like that. We're just like, hey, let's try this note stuff. And it was really exciting. I think artifacts are an important part of our collaborative life cycle, right? Not only what are we doing when we're in the meeting, but what are those things that carry on after the meeting? So I've been excited to to play with notes. I'm friends with the engineers who worked on that and the product team who was involved with that, and I was really excited for them to see that. And we hope that you enjoy it. It's another way that, like mail and calendar and other things that we've introduced. It's another way that we're trying to bring the collaborative experience now to a more document focused workflow.
Where is it? Do you know where do you see it? Because I'm in the Zoom client and I don't see it as one of the the top things. Do you know where to find it?
Not sure how far enabled it is yet, but for me, it's in my upper carousel of those different tabs at the top of the client. So I think for me, it's next to whiteboards, but I don't know how far we rolled it out yet.
It does also take a very latest update of the version number and then a client restart. I know when I first updated, it didn't show up for another couple hours or a day or something.
Oh,
I
interesting.
got restarted
Okay.
to the point it popped up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, David, I mentioned I had posted that in the Discord server actually about that. You have to be on the latest versions. I believe they came out Wednesday. Andy and Sam, I think you guys can double clarify that for me if the actual client update happened then. But that's what I saw on my end for app and for Mac and for PC.
I think I'm on the latest. I'll have to check because I checked it right before we jumped in here. But I wonder if there's a setting somewhere that I need to turn on. I'm not seeing one back here, but maybe it just hasn't rolled out to me yet.
David, the other thing that I did notice is that the host has to enable it. So it sounds like it's in the management panel. I don't know. Andy might be able to tell
A couple things to this. So there is the in-session availability of notes at the bottom bar of the meeting client, which is a meeting owner controlled setting. There is also the asynchronous, by which I mean out of meeting experience, that's available in the client where you have team chat and whiteboard and all of that. So David, if you go to your Zoom.us account and you go down to settings, there should be in the upper carousel, if it's enabled for your account, there should be a tab for notes with a flag that says new. If it's enabled on your account, it may not be enabled yet. Like I said, usually it takes maybe a week or two for it to roll out across all the account tiers before everybody has access to it.
Tell me again. So
yeah, I don't see it for you right now.
Now this also might be, I run into this every time because I'm logged in here. This is a sub account of my business account.
Yeah, so try logging in as the admin and see
Yeah.
if you got access there. You might have to enable it.
Let's see what this says.
I think it was a similar story for Clips as well about where that rolled out. It takes a couple of days for things to become available, but yeah, jumping down to settings there on the left side. And let's see if there's no notes.
All right, so maybe I just don't have it yet.
It may not be available for you yet.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about notes in a meeting. I was thinking about it only as out of meeting.
Well, and that's why I think it's really kind of changed a lot of how we think about collaboration between whiteboard and notes. And the continuous meeting chat is the feature where you can basically take the chat from the meeting and turn it into a persistent chat channel, which I don't know how much everyone here spends in team chat versus just in Zoom meetings. You talked about which client you use. And I think most people think of Zoom just as it's how I join the meetings. But as someone who lives in team chat all day, lives in the Zoom client all day with all those other features, stuff like notes and whiteboards and that continuous meeting chat can really change the game. With continuous meeting chat, some of the things I remember that's been really interesting is we'll have my team's huddle every week. And we have a persistent chat channel that every week when we join that meeting, I can see the chats from last week still there in the history and we can respond to it. And I can have someone who's on a client call, who's not on the call with us right now, responding to chat and dropping links, even though they're not even in the meeting with us, and having all those things coming together along with, I just watched the AI companion summary come on here.
Yeah, sorry. It just dawned on me that I hadn't turned it on. So I just turned it on for us.
But all these things kind of coming full circle so that you start prepping for meetings, you have the meeting, you continue after the meeting, and it becomes one big continuous work stream of collaboration working with your team.
It's been fun to be a Zoom employee during this period and find that more of the task switching that I used to do is now just showing up in the very app more commonly and more frequently, right? It's like, and I think a lot of that is like the switching tax, right? When you move between different applications, right? There's a loss of productivity there. There's just studies that have pointed to that. And now more and more of the things that we've relied on, maybe email for or other forms of communication, right, are now more centralized into Zoom itself. So it is that kind of full life cycle application for collaborating.
How there's a setting in the back end here, allow users to ask AI companion questions about the meeting. I'm wondering where that is, if that's in the transcript or something like that. It says allow hosts and invited participants to ask questions to the AI companion during a meeting based on the meeting transcript.
Okay, so there is, I'm going to refer to the promotional video that I saw, because I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm just going to reference what I saw in the video that everybody has access to, which is that there is a demo of a participant who's late to a meeting asking AI companion what was discussed in the meeting up to this point and getting a summary inside of a right-hand panel window about what's going on so far.
Okay.
I don't know how much of it is released, but I know that was at least part of the discussion about where we've gone so far.
So I just turned on the transcript.
I don't know that you're going to be able to do this with a running meeting. I think you might.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. Now how do I turn it off? All right.
Like that.
Like that. Okay. It still hasn't gone away from me. That's interesting. Oh, wait, I was clicking the wrong button. Here's a persistent Zoom problem. Persistent Zoom problem is the menu, what do you call it? The action bar, the menu bar, in your main Zoom window, all the buttons at the bottom, right? So my main Zoom window is in a little tiny 10-inch teleprompter because I always want to be looking directly at my gallery view. But because of that, all the little buttons at the bottom are also in my little 11-inch monitor, and I'm old and I can't see anything. Is there ever going to come a time when we can either get gallery view on the second monitor or detach that menu bar or whatever it's called, action bar, from the primary window?
I think the easiest way to solve that problem today would just be to duplicate the screen so that the screen that you got in front of you is duplicated to the teleprompter. That's what I would do.
Right.
I think that's because you're always going to be chasing the missing feature, right? Like something else will show up in the main client. You're going to want it on the second window, and it's a vicious cycle. I typically would recommend that if you're using a prompter, that it be a mirror of a display that you have access to, so that you.
Yeah, I need more monitors. That's the problem.
I don't know that prompters were really intended to be interactive displays. I think they're more for like, I want to see, look into their eye, right? So I think it's sort of even if, we do those kind of things, it might not really address what you're looking for.
No. Understood. All right. What else
I posted a picture in the chat of what the AI companion in client looks like.
Great.
From the blog that was posted earlier this week. And again, in this example, it says, what are the action items? And it's giving it catch me up was the first prompt, and it said, hey, this is what happened before you were here. And then it said, hey, what's the action items for afterwards? And it gives us some bullet points. So that's, I think, what's in reference to that question that you had before.
Right. And so at the bottom there's right next to summary, there's an AI companion button, which we don't have, but maybe that's, I don't know why we don't have it.
It may not have been enabled when you started the call.
No, I think it was, but it's possible I'm wrong.
That's definitely what I would check, because the things that generate buttons at the bottom definitely don't take effect live once a meeting is opened.
Yeah, and again, check to make sure that because I think the owner of this is a sub account, right, of the admin account, and the admin account may have some domain over whether or not the account that you're using to host ZTK actually has a lot of this.
Yep, absolutely understood. Great. All right. What other questions or insights or thoughts or AV Trainer, will there ever be a time when people on the mobile app can see files dropped into the live chat like that screenshot? for people who are mobile only, this seems like something that could be a big help. Now, correct. So what that means is that people who are watching this on mobile in Zoom were not able to see that screen, that file.
I would check your client version. And I'm not sure exactly what there might be restrictions such as like, maybe there's a size requirement. I'm not sure exactly what all the rules are around it. I don't know either way, what the limitations are around it, but I can look into it.
Interesting.
David, we didn't get a chance to address the live streaming app. I think,
Yes.
that have come from there, but that was also a new thing between the last time we were here and now. Maybe I assume maybe you've had a chance to take a look at it. Were there any, for the group's benefit, it's basically a way to sign into different platforms where you would stream to and stream to up to 3 of them simultaneously and see the chat messages from those platforms directly inside of Zoom. So it's designed to be a more integrated way of doing live streaming like you're doing today, streaming this meeting, but doing so by signing into that platform directly from Zoom apps and sending it out there. I think it's a good example of an app that goes beyond just showing a web browser inside of a side panel, right? It's more about how is it interacting with Zoom, and I'm always excited about Zoom apps that do things like that. So maybe there's if there's any questions about that, happy to take those as well today.
Yeah, and we're still trying to. So I think we figured out. By the way, I have not been able to demo that here because I'm not the owner. So on YouTube. There's, I believe it's primary owner, and then there's a third tier. I forget if it's manager or something like that. Yeah. So I'm a manager of the Zoom Test Kitchen channel. I'm not an owner. And Jeff has been so busy. I don't want to bother him with it, but once we get that switched, I'll be able to give it a shot. But right now that's on YouTube's end. That's a limitation that is not allowing me to use that app.
Right. You have to be signed into an account that has the role, right, to be able to do that. So,
yep. Mike, there are a bunch of questions that I see flying around here. A couple of them are answered in the chat, but do you want to go ahead and share a couple of them? Yeah.
So Alan on YouTube was asking, how is the capability for double end recording in Zoom announced last Zoomtopia coming along?
Can't comment on the future roadmap.
There you go, Alan.
Frank, where's Frank? Frank seems to know everything that the rest of us don't know. So Frank, can you also not comment on the roadmap?
I certainly can't comment on the roadmap.
One thing I will say, to be fair on the question, is anytime there's a feature that's important to you and you want to see it introduced in the product and you're curious about these kind of updates, it's so helpful to let your Zoom account rep know that you care about it, put in inquiries about it, follow up on things that you care about, because that helps demonstrate the demand, right? And I think that sometimes that is helpful in getting more information about things as well. So I would say that if this community and the communities that you interact with are curious about this feature, and maybe you work for large enterprise organizations in your day job, or maybe you're just a pro user, whoever you are, right? Like sending in those inquiries, asking follow up about the feature, always a good thing to do for things that you care about, because Zoom wants to solicit that feedback.
One of my favorite things about watching Andy move from Tiny Liminal to Zoom is watching him become an absolute expert in not answering questions. It's fantastic the way he's able to dodge and move around these roadmap questions, which we completely understand, of course.
Another question from YouTube. Michaela is asking, is there a way to disable continuous meeting chat for recurring meetings?
I think so.
Sam actually answered this. Sam, you want to just kind of give us a quickie?
Yeah, I dropped the support article for continuous meeting in general, but the second hit when I was Googling it is specifically a support article on enabling it. So it can definitely be turned on and off. And yeah, it's an awesome feature. It also gets in the way sometimes. You don't want it on every call, on every meeting for sure.
Okay, yeah. So what I've done is I've put that in the YouTube chat for Michaela.
Awesome. And just going back to what you were saying before, Andy, about sharing feedback to Zoom, which I know a lot of us do, zoom.us/feed is where you can do that. Thank you, Frank. So Roland is asking if you could talk a little bit about the rationale for the pricing levels based on attendees for Zoom webinar, sessions, and events. And if it's okay, before you do, I just want to add into that maybe, because we were talking last week about the idea of purchasing a per attendee license in order to get access to some of the tools that it live only on events.
Yeah,
we're certainly not looking to game the system, but
we can talk about, I don't think, rationale for pricing. I think that's a little outside of our domain, but we can talk about the differences between the licenses and what you get for each license type. I was actually talking to Sam earlier this week about that very question about like, hey, if I do PPA versus unlimited, what is the enablement for all that stuff? So we can definitely dive into that. Sam, do you want to lead that?
I was going to answer the question in a very safe way and say, you see the price go up from webinar to session to events as you get more features from webinar to session to events. And we hope that each one is packed with more and more value for you. I think when you look at the feature and value add that Zoom Events has, it's crazy what we're packing in there and what you can actually do with it in a very straightforward way. You also see the price at the different license tiers tend to scale off and drop. Same as when you, like with pay per attendee, you're buying 1,000 people versus you're buying 10,000 people. You get a better value buying 10,000 people. The pricing goes down. Answering the pay per attendee question and some of the feature stuff, a big important note there is that if I buy an unlimited license, so I buy a Zoom Events 1,000 unlimited license, I get some of those other features, session branding,
backstage,
webinar breakouts, backstage. I get those sorts of things in my standalone webinars from that same user. I can even have something like a Zoom Events 500 unlimited license, the monthly one or annual one, as well as I could have a webinar 10K license on that same user. And those 10,000 person webinars could take advantage of backstage and those other features. Pay per attendee does not do that. If I do pay per attendee, I only get those extra features in the sessions that are launched using those attendee counts. So it can be a really great option. I see a follow-up question from John here about, would it annoy Zoom if we did per person for part of the year and sub for another? One thing I would note is that I don't know if I corrected myself or clarified there that Zoom Events licenses tend to be on annual contracts. But what you could definitely do is say, look, I need a Zoom Events 100 or 500 license for unlimited for all the year that I do these events kind of constantly. But once a year, I do an event that needs 5,000 people in it. And I could do pay per attendee for that one event a year to be able to have that bigger capacity. That's why pay per attendee exists, is to allow you that flexibility to say like, hey, these really big shows, I only do a couple of them, but we hope that you see the value in all the events you can use and all the different things that can become Zoom Events wrapped inside all these other features and benefits at those unlimited tiers.
So I'm over in my account and I clicked on pay per attendee. So what you're saying is that if I were to do, let's put aside for a moment the intention, but let's talk about what's possible. If I were to buy this 125, I don't actually want to check out quite yet, but if I were to buy this 125, I would not have access to all of the tools that currently exist, like production studio, backstage, things like that.
You would in the sessions that are created in that license and using up those 50 attendees.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
You would not get those features in your standalone webinars if you also had a webinar license versus an unlimited license. If you go over to, that build annually, I can buy a Zoom Events 100 and get backstage for a webinar 50K license that I have. So the unlimited licenses unlock all of these features for that user, no matter what they're hosting.
Understood.
Versus the pay per attendee licenses are just that. The call out there, the one that behaves differently is right now Production Studio. Andy mentioned that we have that change in intent that we're talking about now, but today Production Studio is only within Zoom Sessions and Zoom Events, no matter how you're licensed.
And I think, David, to your earlier question about like, hey, these smaller organizations or these smaller events that don't require all the different things that I can do with the Zoom Events Hub, right? That is the purpose of sessions. And I think that sometimes people get a little confused about that. The purpose of the sessions license is for, you want the production capabilities. I mean, from a producer's point of view, there's multiple different perspectives you could take on this, but from a event producer's point of view, like this group, the people who are trying to make these things happen, right? It's the production tools without all the other stuff, right? Like in as far as, you know, multi-track and expo floor and all that stuff, right? It's designed to be really focused in on, I'm going to host a session, and this is I'm going to be able to do all the stuff that I would want to do in that session, but it's not the big multi-track, multi-event situation that Zoom Events is, you know, known for, right? So
and it really does have everything other than, as you said, the multi-session, other than expo and sponsors. It's got everything else, it looks like.
And that's the big thing, is it has the ability to have the lobby, and it has the ability to have the management style where it's built on a hub and you have a team collaborating on it with co-editors and things like that. So you don't have someone holding the keys to the kingdom, or God forbid, a password being shared around.
Right. So I think sessions just, it has that additional value, right? Because I hear it all the time, right? People ask me like, you know, I want more features and I'd be willing to pay more for them. And it's just, you know, how do I do that? Right. Could we have some premium SKU or right, something along those lines? And I think sessions really answers a lot of that stuff. It was those people who were saying, I don't need to be hosting these giant expos and all that other stuff, but I want to be able to leverage these production tools. That's what a sessions license is, right? That's what it was created to address. So it is out there. It is, and it's becoming more valuable. As you've seen, we've been adding more capabilities that, you know, enhance webinar, enhance other things that are adjacent to it. And yes, having the sessions license when it's under an unlimited plan activates those features in standalone webinar. We just carved out that we said, you know, it's not the case if you're doing PPA. But to Ray's earlier point, he said, you know, if you just want to play around with Zoom Events and learn about it, a small PPA license could be a good way to, you know, get familiar with it and then decide if you want to make the unlimited investment, right? Or something like that too. Yeah. That's
a great idea. So playing around, grab the paper attendee, 50. Sessions, it's $100. Events, it's 125.
And again, if your focus is really on the production tools, those are things that are available in sessions, right? So if you're just trying to learn how to use Production Studio, that's an entry point for you.
And again, just for clarity, Production Studio is only available in webinars and webinars that exist. Well, maybe eventually in webinars. I know that isn't yet, but in webinars that are part of events, they're not available. My point is they're not available in meetings.
Right. The way to think about it, well, yeah, it's true about meetings, but it's also, think about the way Sam put it before. If you're setting it up at events.zoom.us versus if you're setting it up at zoom.us.
Right.
Now it's under events.zoom.us, and it's our stated intention to be able to allow people who have these licenses to be able to do it in standalone webinars, just like Backstage, webinar breakout rooms, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Functionally, you can think of, there's literally nowhere to edit it. In standalone webinars, the page doesn't exist.
You can't get to the start button. That's the problem. So
great. Hey, how about a couple things that we heard about or knew about and haven't heard much from lately? I'm thinking specifically of Zoom huddles. We looked last week to see if that was in my account, and it didn't seem to be, although I had asked for it a while ago and then asked for it again last week. And also Zoom on Zoom, excuse me. Do you all know anything about either of those two and where they are?
The part I was going to talk about on Zoom is it's up and running as much as it has been. It is in beta, and that's where it's been. On Zoom ended up being a lot of the launching point for Zoom Events from an architecture standpoint. It was built by the same team and kind of like kickstarted, almost rewrapped into Zoom Events. The biggest difference about on Zoom versus Zoom Events is it's the market and like ticketing discovery site that Zoom Events isn't. But it is still up and running. If that's something that you're looking for, it's available there.
I loved the idea of on Zoom. When it first came out, I actually thought it was fantastic. I've never really used it, but I thought the idea was brilliant because of that discoverability piece.
Mm-hmm. To your question on huddles, what I can say right now is that it's available by request for people who want to ask for early access, as you have done. It's granted on a case-by-case basis at the moment, so it's not generally available, is my understanding. Zoom
does not love me. That's really why I took over the Zoom Test Kitchen, so that Zoom will love me again. Frank, you want to jump in?
As soon as I unmute. Yeah, please. I have a question about on Zoom. I think I read or heard somewhere that, strictly speaking, it's only available inside of the United States. But there's a
That
way.
is correct.
I'm not from the United States, so I've heard that you can still use it in other countries. There's a workaround. You buy it, and then the listing will appear for U.S. residents, even if you're not in the U.S. or something.
Well, on Zoom I don't think there's, Andy, been any pricing ever attached to it. It started as a free marketplace in its beta form. So there's not a license attached to it, but it is US only.
Right, there's the regional requirement. Yeah, I'm not aware of what the workaround you're referencing is. I haven't done that before myself.
There wouldn't be any Zoom
Okay,
sanctioned ones.
thanks.
By the way, we didn't mention when we were talking about all the ways that Zoom is trying to become sort of the holy grail of organizing your life apps, Zoom Scheduler also, which is sort of a rival to, in some ways, Calendly and Google automated scheduling. Yeah, Andy, do you want to jump in?
Just that it's a real, workflow challenge that people have, right? When they want to align the schedules of multiple parties. And if you're going to be scheduling a Zoom meeting with it, makes sense. Zoom scheduler is going to be able to do that job for you. I think similar story with clips, right? You want to be able to, we have the video, we have the screen sharing technology, we have our cloud portal where you can view stuff. You want to be able to do that. You're using Zoom to do that. Great. Here's a better way to distribute those things, right? So I think, again, you've seen, it's been a busy August. Let's say, there's been a lot of stuff that's come out. And I think that, again, it speaks to that sort of full suite collaboration platform, a lot of things there that are interesting.
So August was busy, but no rest for the weary, because in just a few short weeks, we've got Zoomtopia 23 coming up. I have it blocked off on my calendar. I'm really excited. What are you both looking forward to? What are you going to be working on at Zoomtopia? I imagine, Sam, you are crazy busy getting ready for this.
We definitely
Yeah. It is basically what's going on right now for us is getting prepped for that. So one of the cool things is, like Andy mentioned, we just finished our Perspectives event, which is kind of our test ground each year for the AV production styles we're going to use at Zoomtopia. So last year that saw us first try our little hybridization of a companion webinar join tool and the chat bridging and stuff like that. It's also where we started doing the portrait monitors for the first time, and studio audience galleries, where we started playing with that. And then you saw us bring that to Zoomtopia in the content theaters. This year, our content theaters look pretty similar from an AV design standpoint. Our main stage is pretty different, I think, from an AV design standpoint. But you're going to see a lot of the same things on them. What you're going to see is a completely different way of doing it, though. And it's a way that we're really, really excited about to show you guys at October 3rd and 4th. So you really should check out the keynote. It's going to have some very cool stuff in the first couple of minutes for everyone here. And then, like Andy said, you're going to see us doing that combined production studio, and in the content theaters, you're going to see that combined production studio and ZoomISO workflow, where the virtual attendee, the entire virtual show is being switched natively with production studio, hand to God, and the in-room experience is being produced with ZoomISO and the production team on site there, so that we can really kind of create the best experience for all the different viewing experiences we have, from virtual speakers, on-stage speakers, virtual audience, in-room audience, and everyone sees what they need to see, when they need to see it, how they need to see it.
I would say three things to look for Zoomtopia this year. There's what is Zoom doing as a company, right? Learning about our guidance, learning about the new products, right? The kind of the main talk track, if you will, and the sessions that maybe you're interested in, you learn more about our core products and the industry and things like that. Then there's the production tools that are used to make Zoomtopia, the backstage, the things that are going into putting it together, which we're going to look forward to sharing with this community exactly how we did it. Because to Sam's point before, we're working on new ways of doing things that I think are going to be very exciting to the group. And I'm working very hard on it and looking forward to sharing more about how we're doing what we're doing. And the third thing is I sort of think about it as our guidance, right, for how to do this sort of thing. Because there is this really, it's an opportunity for Zoom to say, this is how, this is Zoom on Zoom, so to speak. This is how we want Zoom to be best represented in this type of context, right? And I think a lot of what I was kind of heartened to see last year at Zoomtopia was that we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our event. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our content. And then we came out with some ideas in the way that we produced our And then I saw other companies following along with the patterns that the event services team and my team had kind of worked out. All right, here's how you should do something like this. And then I saw a lot of that showing up in some of the higher profile events that were taken on by other companies. So it's our chance to sort of set the guidance for the year about this is what events can look like, because we were using the latest tools. We're doing, it on our own platform with our own focus. And so I think it's exciting for those three reasons, right? There's the thought leadership on events. There's the groundbreaking tools that'll be used to produce the show. And then there's learning more about Zoom itself, right? And what Zoom is doing this year and products that you care about, right? And things that you want to learn about. So it's super exciting. There's an expo, there's, sessions, there's networking opportunities. It's great things for both virtual and in person. But if you are coming out, please let me know. I'd love to hear about that and make sure to give everybody a good chance to see what's going on.
There are two keynotes. There's the Vision Innovation keynote on Tuesday, and then the guest keynote on Wednesday. Is the guest keynote something we may want to pay attention to, you think? Or do you know?
I think it's hard to give a blanket statement because there's so many people here from different walks of Zoom, right? People who are coming here from an enterprise or education context, people coming here from a producer's context. I think it's worth checking it all out. I think when we announce who the guest is, it might help explain, kind of what the subject matter will be in relation to, as more of this stuff gets published. But certainly look at the sessions lists as well. Who's talking about what, when. I think that's all public now, I think. So you should be able to see that.
Yep.
Yeah, most of the sessions have gone up. The one that hasn't gone up yet is we will be doing a couple backstage tours, behind the scenes tours that I'll be walking around leading. Those are not public yet, but they're going to be in the next day or two. And you'll see them just in the sessions there. If you are, that is going to be on site only for now. We're planning on trying to film it and have some both. You'll see us do our follow-up webinar series again, where we talk about all the stuff we did and give everyone virtually a really great chance to ask questions directly and see what we did. But if you're coming to the show in person, definitely look out for that.
You got a lot of stuff happening here. It's just amazing. I'm personally really excited about the Happiness concert on Wednesday. Are you guys singing at the Happiness concert? Are you performing?
Not quite.
No. Okay. It looks like we're not able yet to build our agenda. Is that right? Or am I wrong about that?
I don't.
Well, you're on the main page right now. I can't see on your screen. Let's see. Where are you at? Okay, yeah, view ticket. So it looks like the lobby may not be open yet. Yeah, I think the lobby's not open yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is where you'll do the agenda building.
Gotcha. Right. And that Zoom Events lives in the Zoom client. Am I right or wrong about that?
And it doesn't have to. It could be in the web as well.
It can be in the web as well. Okay.
But what you're seeing right now is just the event page.
Right.
You're not actually, because you have that view ticket, you haven't actually joined the lobby to be able to get to the agenda page, which could be, like Andy said, in browser or in client. And now parts of it are in client on mobile, which is really cool. The ability, like on my phone right now, I have my Zoomtopia ticket. I can go click into it and look at all the sessions on my mobile as well.
So I'm looking, I have no upcoming events. I don't really know why I don't have any upcoming events. Maybe I definitely RSVP.
If you click on your picture up there, let's see, is this you as an attendee?
Yeah, tickets. Upcoming, that's interesting. This is definitely my, the account that I would have RSVP'd with. Oh, well, I will have to look into this. Zoom Talk now. All right. Well, I'm not going to bore all of you with this. I will look at this. What else do we have? Oh, I had another question for you. Without talking about roadmap, everybody has been talking about, including Zoom, has been talking about AI, and I'm curious. What do you think Zoom should be focusing on in this next year, from Zoomtopia to Zoomtopia, or what do you hope Zoom is going to really put energy into over the course of this next year?
Well, I think you'll find out at Zoomtopia kind of exactly what the specific answer to that question is. I think that everything that we've done so far regarding AI and the other things that we talked about today are all in service of that collaboration platform, right? A collaboration platform enabling limitless human connection, right? That's our new mission statement, right? And so everything is about that connection. And I think that you're going to see that in any way, shape, and form. I think from my team and from Sam's team, you'll see that, how are we doing that with production tools, and how are we doing that in trying to make these events feel more of an equitable experience, regardless of where you are, and the different ways that we can make them more immersive. And I think you'll see some really interesting things, the way that we produce Zoomtopia this year, that indicate the direction that we're heading in. I also think if you're following along with the liminal story, so to speak, the first year was really about building out Zoom native capabilities that took advantage of some of the ideas that we had proposed in ZoomISO. So we saw ZoomISO version 2, high bandwidth mode, all that kind of stuff. That was part of our first year. And then in our second year so far, what you've seen is the way we've worked with partners, right? The way we've worked with third parties, that we've taken the technology that we've used to build ZoomISO, and we've opened it up to third-party developers. And you've seen now the Mimo Live integration. We announced Wirecast, New Blue Captivate, and many more to come, I think, is one thing I'll say about that. So I think, how we continue to evolve that strategy and what the next step in that kind of lineage is are things that will become more clear at Zoomtopia. And I'll always try to make sure that you guys get a little treasure map from my perspective about where to go and what to look at and what to pay more attention to help guide you through Zoomtopia, because there are so many things going on, right? I don't know how many of you necessarily are going to be looking, through the healthcare track or things like that, or those type of conversations. So but maybe there's something interesting in this session that you might not have thought about, or so I'll help make sure that, if there's interesting things that are going on, that you all know where to find them. But it'll certainly be, I think, a very forward-looking Zoomtopia about, interesting things to come. And I think your questions will become more answered as our executives have a chance to tell you from their, perspective about exactly what the company will be doing from here.
Great. Sam, I'll come over to you next, hear what you want to say, but I did just look up that I am in the right account. This is my confirmation email here, and you can see that it says it'll start in 15 days. You can join the lobby later. And then when you click on view event detail, it brings you right back to where we were before. So there's nothing broken. It's just not open yet. Just wanted everyone to know that.
So excited. Banging at the door. Let me in.
I still have my whale. I have my whale from last year that you guys know wait, I have to get my whale.
There's a lot of coincidence around the lobby, not necessarily coincidence, but there's some careful planning around when the lobby's opening, because there's another big release date on the 16th, I think it is. So I think we're waiting for that release date
for Zoom events or Zoom in general.
For Zoom events.
Here's my whale. It kind of breaks all the time. My Zoomtopia whale from last year.
There you go. Very good.
So proud of this thing. Sam, what are you hoping Zoom's going to focus on? What are you thinking about for this next year?
I think I'm just going to go with my usual answer and say I'm not on the product team. I don't talk roadmap.
Fair enough.
I'm excited that we always have plenty of things to look at and focus on, and I have different answers when the product team is talking to us directly as the subject matter experts and getting that feedback. Along with, I'm excited to continue to do what we've been doing for these years here of keeping you guys on your toes with just new features flying off the shelves constantly.
That is true. It's absolutely happening. There's a question here about on Zoom, a conflict with on Zoom and people using custom Zoom enterprise accounts and clients such as the .gov accounts. Do you know, is that still a conflict?
So the answer is yes. I may not give you all of the best data because there's a data point that Andy and I aren't sure if we can remember is public knowledge or not. So there may be something I neglect to say here. But what I will point out is Zoom for Gov, and it's not necessarily, I guess it is, as AV Trainer listed, it's it's Gov accounts, not necessarily accounts that have a .gov email. You can have a .gov email and register on the Zoom commercial service, but there are two services. There's Zoom commercial and there's Zoom for Gov, which is a completely isolated cloud. It's how we're FedRAMP certified. It's very secure and is used by a lot of really big stuff. So having a .gov email doesn't necessarily mean you're on one or the other, but it's probably a decent indicator that you may have a Zoom for Gov account. Zoom Commercial does not know a Zoom for Gov account is an account because it's a totally different service. They are completely isolated. There's no knowledge shared between them. So if you try to take an account that has a Zoom Gov account and register for a Zoom event, it can't find you. You're not a Zoom user as far as it's concerned because you're not on Zoom Commercial. Zoom Events runs on Zoom Commercial. So right now, Zoom for Gov users, if they were to register, they would need to be using one of the guest join formats or something like that because they don't have Zoom accounts unless they're using a different account or guest join or some of these other options that are now available. But that's kind of what that question is related to.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Another question, in terms of non-product roadmap questions, what is the events team seeing as some of the most common support requests that you are seeing from both average clients and advanced ones? What are the new features that people are wanting to use the most?
I mean, from the event services lens, I don't think much has changed. We're still doing introductory stuff where we're sorting out HD with people and we're sorting out what original sound means and when you should use it or when you shouldn't, and getting kind of those baseline best practices. I think one of the things I'm seeing underutilized at the moment is session branding. Everyone's really excited about Production Studio, and Production Studio is really exciting for several of the magical things and reasons we pointed out, but session branding is dumb easy and looks fantastic, to the point that there were several sessions we were doing in the past couple of weeks, internal events and things, where I would be getting pings from people being like, yeah, Production Studio looks great. And I have to respond to it. We're not even using it. This is just session branding. Like it's easy. It takes very, very little configuration. It looks really good right off the bat. But I think we're still helping people out with a lot of basics because there are these things that are relatively simple for those of us that are ingrained and do this on a daily basis, that people just aren't aware of, don't know. And that's their audio quality, their video quality, and getting that kind of baseline production running.
Yep. For me, it's about the simplification of the workflow to produce a great experience. How do we support you with tools that allow you to more directly achieve the end product that you're looking for, or allow you to achieve a type of end product that you have not been able to achieve before? So it's two different tracks, right? It's one track is you can do it, but it's hard. And how do we make that easier? And the other one is you can't do it. How do we empower you to do it? So my team kind of takes that as a shining star. There's a way to innovate in both ways, right? It can be innovation in the way we simplify. It can be innovation in doing things we've never done before. And I think that's kind of our guiding stars. You know, my team is now a different, we've got a new mission as of last August, and our focus is now very squarely on innovation and how do we do that in Zoom.
Amazing. I'm going to let you guys go in a moment. Tom is curious if ZoomISO or OSC is going to be available in Zoom Gov.
No plans at the time.
There we go. All right. I know you all are so busy, and really, we're just so grateful that you took the time to come by and just have a lovely weekend. We can't wait to see what you do at Zoomtopia. It's going to be amazing. Incidentally, we should have a watch party here in the test kitchen. We should all get together and watch that together. It would be fantastic. Are we going to be breaking any TOS if we stream it into a private Zoom meeting?
We try not to answer TOS questions, but I think the gray area usually isn't too tightly watched.
Okay. All right. We're certainly not monetizing it. So, all right, guys, listen, have an amazing Zoomtopia. Thank you so much and a great weekend. We're going to stick around here in the kitchen and bang on some things, but we want to let you guys go if you need to go.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Good to see you again. And we'll see you after Zoomtopia.
You got it.
There. Yeah. All right. Take care.
Take care. Wow. Okay, then. So, what do y'all say? What do you think? What do we need?
David?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Hey,
Definitely.
that was great. I do want to offer out to people that I made a recording several months ago, really comparing the Zoom events cost pricing structure for both the annual type and the pay per attendee type. And it's on my hub, and I can give you the link to how to get to my hub. But the bottom line is that if you get any of the tiers of the annual license, let's say you get a 1,000 users, you have to have 8 events during the entire year, the lifetime of that license, at full capacity, 1,000 people, in order for that to be cost effective. If you only have 6 events and you've got 1,000 people in your organization, but only 580 of them come to a meeting, you save a lot of money by going to the pay per attendee route, if that particular cost is your issue. If you really want all that other backstory stuff to come in, I'm just a solo guy, and I paid $1,490 for a 100-user annual license. And am I going to get my money's worth out of it? I hope so. I'm doing some things here with it. But
right. So I think, John is raising the point, though, maybe you don't buy the 1,000 tier, right? Maybe you buy the 100 or the 500 tier, and then you top it off with the pay per attendee.
Correct. And that's what I'm telling people. I've had several people come to me. I said, look, if you really think that most of your events are going to be under 500 or 600 or whatever the thing is, but you may have those on occasion, at worst case, it's $2.50 per attendee to get a pay per attendee license at the 50 user license. And once you get up in the thousands, it's under $2, $1.80, $1.70 per person. And for a one-time event, that's not too bad, especially if you're hosting it for someone else and they're paying you.
I think because I took a big leap last year when I jumped into the business account, because that's a lot more money than just a pro account. But it is absolutely. In fact, just today I was in desperate need of a paid Zoom account, and I had an extra one on my plan. I was able to use it. So for me, spending an additional $1,400 on a Zoom events plan is it's not something I need to do right now. Having said that, when you think about what you're getting for an organization, even a small organization, $1,500 is nothing. It's nothing for what you get and the capacity that you have to use it throughout the course of the year.
So anyway, I've had several people come to me, look, I don't want to do any events, but I want to play with it and learn it and get proficient, but it's way too expensive. No, it's $125. And if you don't ever have an event, that license will be good for you for a year. If you have an event and you reach 50 people, your license is dead. You have to buy another one.
Yeah. AV trainer, I think maybe I overshare. Andy sent me a message making fun of me for not wanting to turn on the AI companion because I was afraid I would love it too much. And now AV Trainer is saying that he remembers my trials and tribulations of moving to full business. It really was, it's, if you have a need for it, it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. And for what it's worth, and I'm not even sure I should say this, but I apparently, when I first bought my pro license, I got a discount on it somehow. They were running some sort of promo. That discount has continued to my business account, and I think it's perpetual. Like I don't think it's going to go away. I have no idea where I got it or how I did it, but you can see, there are deals. There are deals out there. The man himself, Mr. Idelson, how are you?
Doing great. Excuse me, I need to make sure I have my microphone. Sorry, I came in hot from the racetrack before.
You are so hot. You are fast and hot.
Laguna Seca, watch it on NBC this Sunday. I wanted to pass something on about the double ending. If you are interested in that, you should subscribe to Cinemaker, because I believe they will be talking about that at the upcoming Zoomtopia.
Cinemaker has really, they jumped on the Zoom bandwagon, and it's really been to their benefit, huh?
Yeah, if you haven't watched the presentation they did at the NAB Creator Up session, that was Alex and Andy was on it, as well as Ben of Cinemaker. And they really did talk about how integrated they were. And I use their I call it their green room. They call it something else, but to have Cinemaker natively be able to have a Zoom call in it and then select anybody in that room as a source on their switcher has been very helpful for the stuff we're doing.
And I know that that's also now available in, oh my goodness, help me out. Oliver's
Mimo Live.
Mimo Live, thank you. And it is in development. I know for a fact, finally, it is in development over at Ecamm Live, where I live.
The interesting thing about the Mimo Live implementation is that Oliver has also integrated the Black Magic tools for the Black Magic Ultramat and their SDI card. So you can, the cleanest green screen available now is Oliver's, what he's called the Mimo Rack, which is a Mac Mini, the SGI, not SGI, I mean the Black Magic Ultramat and their SDI card to get really incredibly clean chroma key.
Wow. All through Mimo Live.
All through Mimo Live.
That's fantastic. John is saying there's a webinar deal now. What's the webinar, John? I don't know if you're able to unmute. What's the webinar deal?
I think it's 50% off for so many months. About 3 months, I think it is. It expires very shortly. You should see it at the top of your screen if you're on the right place and you're.
Well, I'm sure I'm not in the right place, but let's see. Plan management. Zoom 1. I don't see it, but again, maybe. Oh, here's that. Oh, look at that. I didn't mean to find this, but apparently I got this through, what is this soup? TechSoup. A 50% off, and it's still active. I'm not going to touch anything here just in case I don't want to mess it up. Yeah, I don't see the webinar deal here, but.
Yeah, I'm going to comment real quickly about TechSoup. I actually saw a post, 2 posts actually on the Zoom community about TechSoup where people were asking about the Zoom discount deal. And I actually went to my back end people in the Zoom community on the staff and said, look, is this legitimate? Is it good or not? And apparently there are a couple of organizations that have a special arrangement with Zoom that if you pay a fee to that organization, a small one, you do get a pretty good discount, and TechSoup is one of those.
I probably did this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and it's still there, still kicking.
Good to go.
Oh, someone was just saying something. So, what else have we got, folks? What else are we kicking around this week?
Do you have access to Zoom Notes?
So I don't know. Let's take a look here. I haven't seen it yet. So I'm gonna go to the business. Am I in the business account? Yeah. I have no idea what account I'm in. Yes, I am. Okay. So this is my main account here. I don't even see. Go into settings. So up, it's not up at the top. If I do a quick search, I get nothing. I wonder if maybe I have to turn it on down here under the. See, it's not even here. Nope. I do not have it. You know what else is interesting? Here's a little something for you all to chew on. There's no Q&A in this meeting. But I most definitely have Q&A turned on for this account.
Also an option when you create the webinar.
But here's the thing. So I actually don't create this. I just start a meeting.
lots of times when there's a new Zoom feature, meetings that are already scheduled, you have to go manually edit them or they won't get the new setting if you change it as an admin.
Right, but again, I didn't schedule this. There's nothing scheduled here. This is just, I clicked on start an instant, what's it called? Instant meeting? I forget what it's
Oh,
called.
you're starting an instant meeting.
Yeah.
The Q&A in meetings feature, I think requires a generated meeting ID.
Oh, no, I see it when I start in this main account, I see it. I definitely have Q&A. So I've got Q&A turned on here. But for some reason, it's not showing up. And if I were to actually log out of this and log into the account that we're in now, I think we'll also see it. Settings, let's do Q.
Right, but it can be in the settings, but a lot of these features require you to make a generated meeting. So it's
No,
like,
but I happen to know that this one doesn't because I've used it. I've used it. I have it in every other meeting that I do from my main account. I have it. But for some reason, it's not showing up here. And I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know. It should be here. Q&A is one of those things that should be here. But what is there? Is there a reason why you think I should be scheduling meetings as opposed to just starting? If I'm going to use the same, if I'm going to use my PMI anyway, is there a reason why I should schedule a meeting as opposed to start a meeting? Just instant start a meeting?
David, my thought would be just to set up a recurring meeting.
Okay, but why? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why is that more beneficial than just clicking one button and starting an instant meeting? Again, if I'm going to use the same PMI.
From my perspective, it's a security issue that anybody who knows what your actual PMI is can join any of your other meetings. And maybe that's okay and you want that, but some people, like I'm going to have this meeting with this group and I don't want people from this group to be able to get to it. Generating a separate meeting ID means anybody that has the other meeting ID can't just click on it randomly during the day and go, gosh, I wonder if David's in a meeting.
Right.
I'd say the same thing. I rarely use PMI for anything. It's like giving out your home phone number to a business contact. I don't want people, even if I have my waiting room on, I don't want them trying to join meetings that they weren't invited to specifically.
Maybe it's that people don't like me, and because that's never happened to me. So that like no one ever uninvited jumps into my Zoom meetings.
I feel like you're more likely to get Zoom bombed in a PMI, especially if you're sharing the link publicly.
Oh, sure. That I
Right.
no doubt about that. Right.
Yeah, and again, from my perspective, it's not whether I've shared it publicly. I trust all of my associates not to share it publicly, but it only takes one person going, "Hey, look, here's a meeting ID. Come join it," and then you'll be Zoom bombed.
Right.
There are Zoom bomb families, and once you get Zoom bombed in one account, then all these people just start appearing.
Yeah.
We have that sometimes in Toastmasters where we have lots of public speaker meetings, and if one person lets out a code, suddenly they've got Zoom bombers from everywhere. You're just a
Zoom
very
bomb
trusting man,
families.
David. That's the bottom line.
That's the problem. Right. By the way, sorry, getting back to the Q&A thing, it does here on the it does, there is a whole thing here about how to schedule prerequisites for using Q&A in meetings. That's fine, that all works. How to schedule a meeting with Q&A. But again, I don't want to do that. I just want to, and I know it works. I know it works for a fact. In fact, you know what? Oh wait, can I? Oh, I can't. I was gonna fire up a meeting in my main account. I wonder if I could do that.
on a different machine.
Yeah. Let's try this. All right.
Give me your PMI in that other account. I'll go start it for you.
So
Yeah, all you gotta do is set join before host, and anybody can get in anytime.
well, this definitely did not work. So let me try.
While you're looking for that, another thing I thought of for PMI is occasionally you can get the dreaded the host has another meeting in progress error. If someone tries to join your PMI and you weren't expecting them to, and you have another meeting going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
John has a question.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
really
Go
a
for it.
question. I was just going to talk about how we use the, if I lower my hand there, that the personal meeting. And we may change it now that Zoom has sort of come up with a water cooler. But with the parks, there was a personal meeting number, which was sort of the lounge. It was open all the time and it had a password to it. But so generally, anytime somebody in a park of our 54 interpreters wanted to get on with somebody, rather than saying, you know, I'll send you a link, I'll do this, they just said, we'll just go to our personal meeting. And if they didn't want anybody to crash the meeting, they would change the password for that time. And then the other, if anybody tried to go in and it didn't work, they knew somebody was doing a private meeting. And then as soon as their meeting was over, they switched the password back to the public password, which was, I think, real secure, like 1, 2, 3, 4. But it was really very helpful to have a place. You know, we were there so many times. Our group were saying, well, should I use your Zoom room, my Zoom room, send me a meeting? And they would go. So we just said, here's the parks meeting room. Here's the password. Anybody use it when you want it. If you're in there, you know, anybody could come into it. And there were some people who do like we do in office hours. They would just sit in it waiting for people to show up.
But to do that, John, they would have to have the username and password to the account to change the password or the passcode on the meeting. To me, it would be easier to just give out the host key. People could then lock the room. I don't know. I get that on the Zoom community a lot. Oh, you know, it's not really working. I'm sharing my passcode with all these other people, and yeah, don't share your username and password.
No, the host code would be better, but once they've done something, change is a hard thing for them to do.
I know.
Bad habits are so much fun because we keep repeating them.
All right. So sorry, I'm obsessed with my Q&A problem here. So I have another meeting now in my main client and I've got Q&A up, but I scheduled this meeting. If I do an instant meeting, it doesn't start. It doesn't come up, but it has before. It really has. So I'm a little stumped.
The new feature.
No, see, there it is. Look at that. Q&A. And I just clicked the who's he what's it, the start, immediate meeting or whatever it's called. Let's do that again. End meeting. Okay, let's quit. And I'll start it up again. I don't know why, but it feels like I should do that. And drag it over here. So now I'm gonna just do a new meeting. Let's see if I get it. Yep, there it is.
Ray, could that be something that is turned on for his PMI?
Well, that's what I was trying to go look for.
I actually think, you know what I think? I think, let me come back over here. Here's what I think you have to do. I think you have to schedule a meeting and then go to advanced options and turn on Q&A. And then it will work, I think. I'm pretty sure that you have to.
You're talking about advanced options. You're talking about the 3 dots in the participant window?
No. When you go ahead to schedule a meeting from the client, if you scroll down to the bottom, you have advanced options right here.
Right.
And in there, you can say Q&A. I think, see, now that I did it, so on that last meeting that I just did, let me, I can't really show you, can I? Meetings? All right, so no, I can't. It's not letting me show you the one that I've scheduled. But now that I scheduled a meeting and I clicked Q&A for that scheduled meeting, now when I go back in to schedule another meeting, watch, it's automatically going to be checked. So there's something about choosing, and it's not just Q&A, by the way, it's any of these advanced options. It's request permission to unmute, all those other things. You click it once in scheduled meetings and it's persistent. It holds on to it. And then I think, and I'm not going to try this now because I'm in this meeting with this client, but I think that were I to start a new meeting, just a regular meeting from here, that Q&A would now show up.
Probably have it, yeah.
Which is a little weird that that's the way you have to get it done, but. And it seems like that has happened a couple times to me, and I think it's after, like some of you said, I think it's like after an update or something. Very strange.
I'm a huge fan of the Q&A. I was so happy when they brought it from webinar to meeting. It just seems like such a better way to have people engage with questions, especially like today. We had Andy and Sam as guests, if you want to call them guests. They're kind of regulars, but you know, it gives people a chance to vote questions up. So if you run out of time, the most popular questions, sort of like Mukana or whatever, you know, like it's a great idea.
And exactly. And I jumped, as soon as they got here, I went down and I looked and the Q&A wasn't there. And I was like, what? Yeah. Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
You're saying go ahead to John?
No, to Ray. Did you want to jump in? Sorry, Ray.
No, I was good. John Drinkwater's got his hand up for a little bit.
John, go for
it. So putting on my software hat for a second, that thing that you just gone through is really a default value getting dumped in to a field and staying there. Can I claim the weirdest feature I know of Zoom is that the main menu that you have on the main screen at the beginning when you start Zoom, the home, the meetings, the mail, the phone. Did you know you can drag them into a different order and it remembers the order for you?
Yeah.
I did.
Which is quite a neat way of getting the most important buttons in the order you want them.
Yep. So here, let's just, I have to make it bigger so you can get all the buttons there. Come on.
But the question I was going to ask was to do with security again. And that is the one thing you don't seem to be able to do is to get rid of the invite button when somebody's in a meeting. So if you let one awkward person into the meeting, shall we say, and they go into the participants button and they choose invite, they can ask all their other awkward people to come in because they can now see the meeting and the password.
So you want to hide the meeting information from your participants?
I may even have meetings where I do not want them to be able to invite other participants.
I'm understanding what John's talking about is basically there's an invite. You can actually get the actual URL, which you can give out, or the meeting code you can give out once you join a meeting to be able to disable that. John, am I right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, and basically your security option at that point is to lock the meeting. And you know, don't use the hammer to drive the screw and vice versa. If your intent is I've got the one person in the meeting that I want to talk to and I don't want anybody else to do that, lock the meeting.
Yeah, well, we hold a lot of meetings in Toastmasters where we're inviting guests to come and join us and learn what it's like to be a public speaker. And we have to just assume that everybody's nice until they prove otherwise. But that annoying thing about the invite button is if they are on the ball, then the first thing they should do is remember those and then they they get out. So if there's a way to turn that off, that would be wonderful. Let me just say the way that I am now using meetings to get more control on people, if I may. I am using a external program. It doesn't matter what it is, to be honest, but I'm using an external form for people to register for meetings. And then I'm using APIs to go and register them on the Zoom meeting. The API from Zoom then sends me back their personal link, which then goes into this database. And then I email them out their personal link to the database. So they never see the registration to Zoom, and they never see the ability to register other people through Zoom. So I can control exactly when they get reminders.
But when they're in the meeting, they can still access the information, right?
Exactly, which is what I'd like to turn off.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But it does by using the API to register with Zoom back into a contact management system rather than getting Zoom to do it. I've got total control on when they get emails reminding them to attend the meeting, and also exactly what I put in the meeting. But because I've registered them and got the link back, I had their personal URL for them to join the meeting. So I can put that, I can create the Zoom-like email with all the details that I need, but I've got total control on when it's done, how it's worded, etc.
Tamara is saying that she uses Obvio, and Tamara, I actually really would love to hear more about that, because I was really blown away by it. And it does the same thing. You can still see a link in the meeting, but that link won't work for them. It's really interesting.
David, I just wanted to double check. There was a question from YouTube related to, since we're still talking about security. Alan was asking from YouTube, can you check the security settings menu tab to see if Q&A can be turned on? I think you might have touched that.
Yeah, so I did check that, and you can't. And yeah, and I actually wrote Alan back over on YouTube. Sorry, I didn't mention it here, but yeah, there's no, that was a good thought. I hadn't thought about that,
Yeah.
but there's nothing there.
If it's enabled, you can turn it off and turn it back on. But if it's never been enabled, it's not
Right.
there.
Right. John.
I just wanted to, give the same sort of question that John had, suggesting that we might, as a group, want to go to suggestions at Zoom, because I also would like to turn that invite off on participants. I think the reason we don't get into trouble is most people don't know you can do that. And a plus for grants, Avio, it works very well. It does very similar to what John said. But yeah, there is a challenge, because once you have the participants list, if they're smart enough to know, that's how they could get the meeting number and password.
I think also if you have it locked down to invite only, then of course anybody can invite another person, but that at the very least, that is it's putting some extra steps in place that bad actors may not want to bother going through. And the other thing is, this is where a waiting room comes in really handy. If you can have someone monitoring the waiting room, and maybe that and they have a list of participants who are supposed to be there, then maybe you could manage.
Yeah, but you can lie. We have
sure.
I won't give them a name drop for fame, but we have a certain person that we've asked not to attend our meetings. We do everything we can, and that person still turns up under different email addresses, different names. And their ability to break into our meeting and join us just shows how dedicated some people can be.
Right. And the truth is that if you get Zoom to turn off the invite button, they'll figure another way in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they register in different ways, but it would be nice to be able to lock down the meeting without locking down the meeting for those people that you want to invite, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think John and not me personally, but our group, whenever you have a group like Toastmasters and like we have the state parks that want to get as many people in, so the more you're out there, the more people start seeing it and look at it. So I think for most of us, it's not a problem, but where you're trying to be more public, and at least the good news is Zoom does some tracking. I know we had one incident where one of our team members wasn't thinking and posted their meeting link on a very public site. And we immediately got a little warning from Zoom going, do you know that this meeting is public? And we were able to correct that.
I wonder, John, because I'm like you, I deal with organizations that want to get the most people possible. They want to have the fewest barriers. They want ease of entry. And I wonder, we should do some scientific studies on this, if the quality of the meeting that comes from having a few extra steps that people have to go through is inversely proportional to the access that we give to folks. That is to say, are we actually getting a wider reach by not using things like a passcode or a waiting? I mean, you have to use one or the other, but by protecting our meetings so much, are we actually benefiting our attendance? Or if we had
David, I suppose the answer to that is what I just explained for having my registration form directly bring them into Zoom, because the so-called gurus who run all these open events flogging stuff online, they have a order form or a booking form where you book for the seminar, and then they send you the link to Zoom and you have to book on Zoom separately. I mean, that is an obstacle. I have one form, you fill the form in, and then you get an email with the link to Zoom. It's usually a 24-hour gap because we have a system for some of the groups that they want to check if you're a member. And if you're not a member, you've got to pay before you get the Zoom link. But we do it that way. So
and
we
so
have
the
one
only
form.
difference. So the only difference is your email to them doesn't have the information they can share.
Correct. If they share their link, then 5 of them turn up with the same name.
Gotcha.
And yes, I've seen that happen. It is hilarious when that happens. I have seen events where they've mistakenly sent out the person's link, and there are 62 Bobs in the meeting, and no one could work out who's the right Bob.
Oh, I've had webinar clients send their panelist link out to all of the other panelists and wonder why they all turned up with their name. It's like I can't tell them enough times, don't do that, but yet they still do it.
So there's another thought here that AV Trainer is putting in, which is that do they just need to be able to join and interact with the meeting, or do they need to be able to speak, show, and share freely? Because you can also lock down what your participants are able to do. You can turn off chat, you can turn off video, you can make them be muted, and then it doesn't really matter. I mean, except for their screen name and their profile picture, where they can still do that. But there's a lot less space for bad actors.
But with respect, David, doesn't that go against what you just said earlier of making it as smooth as possible?
Oh no, absolutely.
And in our club meetings, we like to just leave everything on so people can unmute themselves. They can turn the video on in their own time. Everybody has the control. And if you've got a trusted group of people, you don't have to have all the security features. So that's
agreed. Right. And maybe I've been lucky, and now that I'm saying this on YouTube, this is probably dumb because now I'm probably going to get hit, but I use a waiting room, and I know everyone who is coming into a meeting with me. I don't know them, but they've signed up for the meeting. I know who I'm supposed to be meeting with, or I know who's coming to one of my classes or workshops, and I just let them in, and I've never had a problem. I just haven't had a problem.
I will often make sure that I'm the person who greets everybody when they come into the meeting. And I will, in the way I speak, make it very obvious that I know Zoom inside out. In fact, I quite often leave my Lord Zoom name at the beginning of the meeting. And that is enough to intimidate most people to not even try to pick on me. Yep. Because I know where the buttons are, and the security features are there. Yes, we've all got it on our Stream Deck, haven't we? The panic button, you hit it and everything's shut down.
Right.
So they don't try it very often. I think in the last 2 years, I've only once been hit by a group. We once had a group, and I was quite impressed. The amount of organization they'd gone to just break into our meeting. There was a dozen of them turned up. And then one after another, they all started spamming and putting things in chat and trying to screen share and turn on videos and just try and annoy us. But I thought, how is the youth of today really losing out is the PlayStation too expensive that they have to sit there trying to annoy a few old fuddy-duddies on Zoom?
Wow.
Yeah.
AV
another-
Trainer, I know there's a question. Hang on one second, Mike. Just AV Trainer is saying there's a setting that restricts the link for a user to only be able to join using one device. So I guess it's IP related connected rather than user connected. At that point, the link really only works once and then requires the next person to register to get in using a different account. So that may be something to look into.
That's a good point, but that doesn't stop the invite link.
No, it doesn't. Mike, we have a question from YouTube.
Yes, it's from Adrian. He's using vMix on AWS and Zoom with NDI outputs. How can I select a speaker and not give screen shared displays, i.e. a clean feed of one person?
I think it's not get screen share displays. So is this sounds to me like a ZoomISO job, right? With
Right,
ZoomISO.
but it sounds like to me he's doing everything in the cloud. So unless you wanted to get a virtual Mac instance in AWS, which I believe there is such a thing, I'm not 100% on that, but you would not have the capabilities of ZoomISO or ZoomOSC if they're Mac based.
Yeah. What do you all think? I have never worked in the cloud like that. I know that's the future, but
Yeah. Ray, any thoughts? No?
Well, my thought is it depends on where you're trying to get just a clean feed of the speaker. Are you talking about on the output to your Zoom clients? To turn off the screen share if that's what you want. But if you do in the cloud, when you do your recording options, there's like a dozen check boxes in there, and one is to give just the speaker its own video. And so whoever's the primary speaker goes there. My issue with that personally is that it doesn't behave like you do in a webinar when you have speaker view and you've got spotlights. It only grabs the person speaking. It doesn't grab the spotlit people. But to me, if you are looking for post editing, check that box to get just the speaker. And I've used that very often when I'm post editing to drag a really good image of the speaker wherever I want to on the post edited video.
Yeah, Adrian did mention in YouTube as well, he is agreeing with me, saying that yes, he is doing it in the cloud and he is using Windows. So that would definitely be, if you're looking to get the type of clean feed that you're looking for, that you can isolate the feeds, definitely ZoomISO, as Andy in the Liminal group have made. But again, it is Mac based, specifically Mac M1, M2 based, preferably M2. So if you could fire up an AWS instance of Mac from their data centers, then I would actually incorporate that in your chain and then send those feeds directly to vMix at that particular point.
Hey, John, since you mentioned the panic button, what do you put in your panic button?
I have too many Stream Decks. I think I've got 7 now.
No, but what's in your panic button? What on one of them?
What does it do?
Yeah, what are the
It
different
does
states?
there's a shutdown option, which I believe still works.
Is this in OSC ISO?
Yeah.
There's a shutdown option.
Which I think turns off everybody's video and mutes everybody. Is that except for
it
the
more or less
host?
shuts down everybody. It's dramatic, but it gives you a reset that you can then restart people from.
Huh.
If you look on your security feature, if you click on the security button, you should see the ultimate
security
reset.
I don't even have a security button.
Well,
Sure.
if
Sure you
you're
do.
running the event, you will have. No, on Zoom.
Oh, in Zoom. Oh, I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying. Using the built-in thing to Zoom itself.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Frank, what do you want to say?
Well, sorry,
I didn't. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'll update it again in chat. I found the AWS link to actually having a Mac instance in the cloud. And I also gave that to Adrian on YouTube.
It probably would be nice to have a day in the cloud. a meeting in the cloud, or shall I say, a meeting about being in the cloud. I don't know how many people have played with it in the group and how many people like to. I've tinkered with it, but I've never really used it in anger.
Well, if you have the time to, we should probably invite Oliver here, because Oliver is running Mimo Live with Zoom in the cloud. And that's pretty amazing because he's getting all the Mimo Live functionality and the Zoom meetings with the speed where they're basically all in the cloud. So
Is that how he's doing conversations?
that the conversations is being run on Mimo Live, but not in the cloud.
Not in the cloud.
Yeah, the reference Dave just made is conversations with Tony Mobley has switched over to Mimo Live being the engine that they're using. But that's on one of Tony's, I believe it's on one of Tony's mini in his house. Because unfortunately, cloud Mac OS implementations are not inexpensive. It's not quite like, Amazon where you can build any flavor of Windows machine that you want.
What else do people have? Anything else? We have reached the 5 o'clock hour.
I've got just one minor contribution point. Has anybody actually read Zoom's 10K or 10Q form that they file with the SEC?
What is it? What is a 10Q form?
It's the form that any publicly traded company has to file with the SEC on a quarterly basis and annually a wrap up of the entire thing. And if you go to any Zoom page, scroll to the very bottom and click on investors and go to SEC filings, you can look for all of those filings. And to me, it's worth everybody's 30 minutes to kind of go through that thing at some point and learn more about Zoom. I went through that and I've asked several Zoom employees, hey, have you actually read any of the company? No, I've never read any of that stuff. There's some real interesting stuff in there. And if you ever have the chance, you ought to take a wander through. I thought they were heavy AWS users. I thought they were heavy cloud users. They've got a quarter of a now I can't remember, is it $250 billion worth of hardware out there that's all their own? They only use AWS and those sorts of things when they have capacity issues and can't ramp up fast enough. They have all of this stuff on their own servers, which to me I thought was great. But
I'll ditto Ray for reading it because and you should read that and read some other companies because they are really very transparent, and that's one of the things I really like.
They put percentages of how many different types of accounts that they have, not down to the granular level, but there's a quantity of how many customers contribute over $100,000 a year in revenue. And does anybody do you have a clue how much income Zoom gets in a year?
We're doing okay.
They're doing all right.
We're doing all right. As are we, thanks to them. Thank you, Frank, for the link, investors.zoom.us. All right, folks. I think I'm going to call it.
Thanks, David.
I'm going to go in and figure out this Q&A thing. I'm going to search for notes. Oh, and so next week, I can't really be here next Friday because it's the beginning of the Jewish high holidays. So I'll start the meeting and then Mike and Frank and you all are, you don't need me. But if I can jump on for a couple minutes, I turned on Zoom IQ for this meeting. And so I will show you all what I came up with. Not Zoom IQ, sorry, Zoom Companion or IQ Companion. What is it called? AI Companion. AI Companion. Yeah. Right. Yes. I'll show you all what I came up with. So, all right, my friends, hoping you have a lovely, lovely weekend, and so much thanks to all of you, and we'll see you soon on The Kitchen.